Okay, welcome to the debate. So imagine you are at a highly technical academic symposium, and you've hired a translator to convey your complex research to this international audience.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Right, and this translator is incredibly charismatic. Like they speak the target language flawlessly, their grammar is impeccable, but there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Always. They are entirely amnesic. I mean, they don't actually know any of the underlying scientific fact you're presenting. They are just highly skilled at predicting the next most plausible sounding word.
Well, I mean, if you hired a translator with amnesia, you've probably made a pretty critical error in your hiring process. Just saying.
Fair, fair. But I ask, would you let them take the stage unchecked, or would you want to inspect every single sentence they translate before they speak on your behalf?
I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. Because today we are looking at the professional equivalent of that exact scenario. We're examining the role of artificial intelligence in building a living professional record, or an LPR.
Right. And for those tuning in, an LPR is essentially a dynamic, evidence-based portfolio of a professional's career. It's far more comprehensive than just a standard resume.
Yep. And AI has made it instantly possible to generate these highly polished professional surfaces for these records. I mean, bios, LinkedIn summaries, interview answers. AI renders it all in seconds.
And that speed is undeniably a paradigm shift. I mean, it completely changes how professionals communicate their value to the market.
It does. Which brings us to the core of our discussion today. The tension here centers on the exact moment after the AI produces that rendering. Like, how should professionals and advisors govern that output?
Right, the post-generation phase.
Exactly. The methodology dictates something called an AI output claim check. And I'll be arguing that AI output is inherently incomplete, because AI's core flaw is conflating linguistic fluency with factual evidence.
Oh, here we go.
I'm just saying, a rigid, granular post-generation interrogation is an absolute necessity. You have to prevent AI from inflating and just, inventing reality.
And I take a completely different view on this. I mean, obviously, human review is mandatory, right? AI cannot be the final authority on the truth of a professional record.
Well, we agree there.
We do. But I am going to argue that this hyperfixation on post-generation checking is a massive overcorrection.
Overcorrection?
Yes. If you strictly govern the inputs before the AI even sees the data, this whole forensic back-end interrogation becomes redundant. It's an administrative bottleneck that actually stifles AI's primary benefit as a powerful market translator.
Okay, well, let's get right into the mechanics of why I believe that back-end check is strictly non-negotiable.
Let's hear it.
My stance is grounded in how large language models actually function when they process professional data. AI completely changes the cost of sounding qualified, but it does not change the evidence required to actually be qualified.
Sure, but
Hang on. Without a rigorous AI output claim check, the system naturally drifts toward generic professionalism and inflation. It wants to please you.
right, the sycophancy issue.
Exactly. So it takes a candidate who, say, helped out on a project, and suddenly it says they spearheaded an enterprise-wide transformation. AI output is not finished when it appears. It only becomes usable after review, revision, and approval.
Look, I hear the concern about inflation. I really do. But treating every AI output like a crime scene that needs investigating, it treats the symptom rather than the disease.
The disease being what exactly?
The disease is bad prompting and raw, ungoverned data ingestion. Our framework relies on utilizing a safe source packet and a source-bound prompt.
Right, the front-end approach.
Exactly. That means you give the AI strictly governed evidence. You explicitly define the boundaries of the claim, and you set strict privacy labels up front. If you do the work on the front end, the AI isn't going to invent or inflate.
You're putting a lot of faith in a prompt.
It's not faith, it's instruction. Treating the resulting output as inherently untrustworthy paralyzes the workflow.
But can we really trust a source-bound prompt to override the fundamental architecture of a language model? Let's go back to my amnesiac translator analogy.
Oh, we're back to the amnesiac.
Yes, because it works. The AI uses words like spearheaded and transformed and revolutionized, not because they reflect the user's truth, but because those words are statistically overrepresented in successful professional profiles online.
Okay, but
It's just doing math. Because our amnesiac translator is so statistically biased toward fluency, I argue every single word must go through a customs inspection.
okay, see, your analogy only holds up if you hand that translator a blank sheet of paper and say, hey, make this person sound impressive. That is a weak prompt.
It's a standard prompt for most people?
But the methodology clearly distinguishes between a weak prompt and a source-bound prompt. When you explicitly instruct a model, using only the provided evidence, create 3 resume bullets. Do not invent metrics, titles, tools, team size, or outcomes.
Right.
Use the word supported unless the evidence clearly dictates led. When you do that, the AI does not behave like an amnesiac. It behaves like a highly restricted engine.
A restricted engine that still hallucinates.
It respects those boundaries. You don't need to strip search the output if you've already locked the doors to the building.
All right, I'll concede that a highly restricted prompt reduces the blast radius of a hallucination. But I am stuck on the fact that an AI is still a probabilistic engine.
Which means it's predicting the next word.
Yes, which means it will inevitably attempt to smooth over gaps in the human narrative with synthetic polish. And that is why the AI output check exists.
The infamous 8 questions.
The essential 8 questions. Let's actually look at what this specific check asks an advisor to do after AI produces output. For each generated sentence, they have to ask, and bear with me here,
I'm bracing myself.
what is being claimed? What evidence supports it? Did AI invent anything? Did AI inflate ownership, scope, outcome, or metric?
I mean, we're only halfway through.
I'm not done. Is the verb accurate? Is the claim mature enough? Is privacy protected? And finally, can the client defend this in conversation?
Look, if you're a professional listening to this right now, rolling your eyes at an 8-question checklist for a single sentence, honestly, I completely get it.
You think it's too much?
Listening to that list, I can't help but see incredible administrative bloat. Think about the sheer friction that introduces into the process of building an LPR.
But that friction is intentional. Let me give you a very real example of why skipping even one of those questions is dangerous.
Okay, lay it on me.
I was looking at a case recently involving a junior analyst. This individual created a shared onboarding checklist for their specific 5-person team during a period of high turnover.
Okay, solid contribution.
Right. The manager reviewed it, new hires used it, it's solved. But when an AI, even with a decent prompt, tried to translate that raw note into a standard market format, it output something ridiculous.
Which was?
It said, spearheaded enterprise onboarding transformation, reducing ramp time and improving cross-functional alignment.
Let me pause you right there because a proper source-bound prompt would have explicitly stated, do not claim company-wide transformation. Do not claim reduced ramp time without numerical evidence.
Even with those constraints, models drift.
If the prompt is right, that sentence never gets generated in the first place.
They summarize, and in summarizing, they escalate. When we run that specific sentence through the 8 questions, the check successfully catches the inflated verb spearheaded.
Because they didn't lead an initiative.
Exactly, they made a checklist. It catches the false scope, enterprise, because it was only one team. It catches the invented outcome, reducing ramp time, which completely lacks metric evidence in the source notes.
Right, so you revise it.
Running the check forces the advisor to revise the text to something like created a shared onboarding checklist for one team during a high turnover period, coordinating manager input to improve consistency.
Which is definitely less flashy.
Less flashy, but grounded in absolute, undeniable evidence.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the AI's version was better. The revised, human-checked sentence is obviously more accurate.
Thank you.
But where I fundamentally disagree is the necessity of a formalized, rigid 8-step process to arrive there.
How else do you get there?
Out of those 8 questions you listed, there is really only one that truly matters in practical, real-world application, and it's the very last one. Can the client defend this in conversation?
You seriously think the defense test is enough on its own?
Absolutely. If the client looks it spearheaded enterprise onboarding transformation and says, I can't back that up if a hiring manager asks me about it. The output is rejected. End of story.
That is incredibly optimistic. Forcing an advisor to systematically document answers to all 8 questions for every single generated sentence ignores the holistic truth of the claim. It turns the advisor into a micromanager of syntax rather than a strategic partner in market translation.
Okay, I have to push back hard on that.
Relying solely on the question, "Can the client defend this?" is incredibly dangerous. Have you noticed how easily people suffer from their own professional amnesia?
Meaning what?
Or conversely, how susceptible we all are to the psychological effect of seeing ourselves described in glowing terms?
The seduction of fluency, as they say.
Exactly. The seduction of fluency. When a client reads an AI-generated bullet point that makes them sound like a visionary Silicon Valley executive, they might genuinely convince themselves, "You know what? I suppose I did spearhead an enterprise transformation."
Even though they just built a spreadsheet.
Yes, the human ego wants to believe the AI's inflation. The 8 questions act as a structural mechanism that forces the advisor to tether the claim back to the evidence, protecting the client from their own aspirational drift.
That's a fair point about human psychology, I'll give you that. But let's shift the angle and look at the technological ecosystem we are actually operating in.
Which is?
AI's job in building an LPR is to translate raw, messy human notes into market-ready language. It has to create a machine-readable signal that external recruiters and applicant tracking systems, ATS, can instantly parse.
I don't see how accuracy hurts that.
If we run every single draft through this exhaustive gauntlet, stripping away all the polish to make it, quote, less flashy, we run a massive risk of breaking that machine readability.
How does prioritizing factual accuracy break machine readability?
Because the hiring market speaks a very specific optimized dialect. Let's take a client who maintained an IT issue tracker and answered user questions during a new software rollout.
Okay.
If the AI drafts led enterprise-wide digital adoption strategy, we both agree that's wildly inflated.
Completely.
But if we revert entirely to the raw, hyperliteral operational language, supported digital tool rollout by maintaining issue tracker, we risk making the text too granular, too mundane, and failing the system translation.
But it's true.
But it might lack the necessary role, keywords, title alignment, and external wording patterns that get the LPR surfaced in a search in the first place. AI is brilliant at bridging that gap between what you did and what the market is searching for, but only if you let it apply its understanding of market language patterns.
I honestly hear what you're saying about ATS keywords. I do. But machine readable is simply not enough. The signal must be human believable.
Well, obviously it has to be believable.
But a keyword-stuffed AI draft might successfully travel through an automated filter, and then it will inevitably fail the moment a human hiring manager actually reads it.
Why?
Because it lacks operational texture. When AI makes everyone sound exactly the same by deploying generic professionalism, it actually harms the candidate.
You mean the classic results-driven professional trap?
Yes, we've all read that exact sentence 1,000 times. Results-driven professional with a proven ability to leverage cross-functional collaboration and strategic execution to deliver measurable impact.
It hurts to even hear it out loud.
It's perfectly polished, it contains all the right keywords, and it means absolutely nothing. If you don't rigorously check the output against the evidence, hasn't the AI completely erased the client's distinctive human contribution?
I'm not saying we accept hollow renderings.
The standard is that a record must be structured enough to travel, but specific enough to be trusted. The AI provides the structure, but only the raw evidence supplies the trust. If you skip the 8-question check, you lose the concrete reality of the work and replace it with an abstract noun and a vague adjective.
Look, I am entirely with you that results-driven professional is a hollow rendering. Nobody wants to read that. But I approach the solution from a completely different direction. You fix generic professionalism on the front end in the safe source packet.
By providing more data.
Exactly. By providing richer data. If you give the AI rich, contextual, metadata-heavy notes, it won't default to generic buzzwords. Large language models default to generic statistical language when they are starved of evidence.
Sure, but
If the source notes are thin, the advisor must gather more evidence from the client instead of asking the AI to hallucinate better language. My point stands. If you prepare the source packet properly, the AI generates a human-believable signal natively.
So you're saying no checking at all?
I'm saying you don't need a heavy-handed post-mortem correction process to inject texture back into it.
But that brings us to the most debated, and look, I admit, the most administrative part of this entire methodology. The reality of professional compliance requires traceability.
Here come the logs.
Our framework requires the use of an AI translation log and a rejected AI claims log. This is where we deal with the burden of governance and the critical concept of claim maturity.
And this is exactly where I believe the protocol tips over from reasonable oversight into pure, exhausting busy work.
I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm genuinely curious how you govern without it. Let's talk about emerging claims. Say a client takes a 6-week data analytics course and builds a practice dashboard on their laptop,
Okay.
but they have zero actual workplace application of this skill. If you feed that into an AI, the AI is highly likely to instantly brand them a data analytics professional with proven reporting expertise.
Right. It escalates an emerging skill into a mature senior claim, which it shouldn't do, I agree.
Right. The methodology dictates we must reject that output and log the rejection, noting that the safer, evidence-backed rendering is building data analytics capability through coursework and practice dashboard development.
And you want to log every single time that happens.
Yes. By formally logging these rejected claims in the rejected AI claims log, the advisor proves they are actively governing the machine. It prevents professional amnesia down the line and proves the LPR wasn't just blindly handed over to a statistical engine.
That is a very compelling argument for accuracy. But have you considered the sheer friction of logging every single misstep a language model makes?
It's part of the job.
I fully acknowledge that claim maturity is a critical concept. We absolutely cannot let emerging skills masquerade as mature expertise, but requiring a formal log entry every single time the AI outputs an inflated verb or an unsupported metric is exhausting.
It is the only way to prove the provenance of the final rendering.
But think about traditional writing for a second. Before AI, when an advisor or human copywriter sat down to draft a professional narrative, they wrote bad sentences.
True.
They used the wrong verbs. They would write a draft, look at it, realize it overstates the client's role, and they would just hit the backspace key. We do not require a human writer to maintain a rejected human drafts log.
That's entirely different.
We trust the final approved rendering. So why is AI treated differently? The focus of governance should absolutely be on the final product. The record governs the AI. Yes, but we shouldn't have to document a forensic trail of every single translation error the AI made along the way. It turns what should be an agile, empowering tool into a bureaucratic nightmare.
I actually agree that hitting backspace is vastly easier for a human, but I'm stuck on the fact that an AI doesn't know what a fact is.
It knows patterns.
A human writer understands context, truth, and liability. A human writer hits backspace because they have a conscience and a conceptual understanding of the boundaries of reality. An AI model has none of those things. It is generating text based purely on statistical proximity.
But the human advisor reviewing it does have a conscience.
Yes, but the human advisor is susceptible to fatigue. The reason the rejected AI claims log is mandatory is precisely because AI fluency is so seductive and it is just so easy to just click accept.
So you're regulating the human, not the AI.
The log is not busy work. It is a forced cognitive speed bump. It proves that the advisor did not succumb to the temptation of accepting a beautifully written but factually hollow AI narrative.
A cognitive speed bump.
Yes, it forces the advisor to consciously slow down and systematically ask, is this claim too broad? Does it imply expertise beyond evidence? Does it reveal private context that the AI accidentally synthesized?
I see the value in a cognitive speed bump. I really do. especially when someone is just learning how to govern these tools. But in daily practice, once an advisor is proficient, privacy and accuracy are best protected before the prompt is ever run,
You're back to the front end.
because that's where the control is. If you use placeholders, safe summaries, and metadata-only notes in your safe source packet, the AI cannot expose private context because it literally never had access to it.
Assuming the advisor perfectly sanitized the input.
It cannot inflate a metric if the source-bound prompt expressly forbids it and the data isn't there to manipulate. I will always advocate for pushing the burden of governance to the front of the workflow where it prevents the fire rather than fighting the fire after the draft is rendered.
Which means you are placing an enormous, almost unconditional amount of faith in the precision of your prompt and the obedience of the model.
Not faith, engineering.
I maintain that because the model is fundamentally a rendering engine, because it is literally designed to hallucinate language creatively, its output is always volatile.
With the perfect prompt?
Yes! You can write the most elegant, restrictive, source-bound prompt in the world, and the AI might still hallucinate a logical outcome or genericize a distinct, nuanced contribution just to make the sentence scan better.
Well,
The 8-question AI output claim check is the non-negotiable firewall. We must accept that AI output is never finished when it appears. It only becomes usable after review, revision, and approval. It ensures that the final rendering is truly owned by the client, backed by evidence, and accurately reflects claim maturity. Because, as our standard states, fluency is not evidence.
and I will maintain that while AI cannot decide truth, we must allow it to be a fluid translator. If we handcuff the translation process with an overly rigid, exhaustive postmortem on every generated sentence, if we force people to log every rejected adjective, we lose the efficiency, the speed, and the market alignment that makes AI valuable in the first place.
So you just let it run wild.
No, you put the firewall at the source. Govern what goes in, and the output will largely govern itself. It just requires a light human review to ensure the client can confidently defend it in an interview.
You know, it seems we are approaching a point of convergence, even as our primary disagreement clearly holds strong.
I'd say so.
We both fundamentally agree that AI output is never the source. It is always just a rendering. The client ultimately owns the final representation of their professional reality, not the machine.
Absolutely.
Furthermore, we agree that the evidence must always govern the AI. The AI can never be allowed to dictate the evidence.
Precisely. We are fully aligned on the fundamental framework that AI is a translator, not an authority. Where we continue to disagree is simply where the heaviest burden of that governance belongs in the workflow.
Right, front end versus back end.
Exactly. I believe it belongs on the front end, in preparing immaculate safe source packets and tightly constrained prompts, avoiding the administrative paralysis of exhaustive back-end logging and 8-question gauntlets.
And I stand by the absolute necessity of the back-end audit, because AI so easily and seamlessly conflates linguistic polish with factual evidence. I believe the rigorous AI output claim check, supported by detailed translation logs, is the only structural way to ensure the machine hasn't quietly rewritten a person's professional history.
It's definitely an incredible challenge. The complexity of translating human work into polished professional surfaces without losing the underlying messy truth.
It is.
It's a constantly evolving landscape. And as these models get more sophisticated, the stakes for getting the governance right are only going to get higher.
They certainly are. Which brings us right back to our highly charismatic amnesiac translator at the symposium.
Let's hear it.
Whether you choose to tightly restrict the vocabulary they are allowed to use before they step up to the microphone, or whether you choose to rigorously inspect and log every single sentence they translate before you let them speak, the ultimate goal remains exactly the same: preserving the undeniable truth of the work underneath.
Well said.
We will leave it to you, our listeners, to evaluate these frameworks and decide how best to govern AI in your own professional practices. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.